It was a Tuesday evening when everything started to fall apart. I didn't expect it. I didn't ask for it. But somehow, that night, of all nights, was the one that turned my life upside down. I'm not the type to jump to conclusions or make a scene. I'm Adam, 36 years old, an accountant with a fairly uneventful routine. If you were to look at my life from the outside, you'd probably think it was as mundane as it gets. I'm married to Mira, a woman with more ambition in her pinky finger than most people have in their entire bodies. You know the type. Always striving, always pushing. She's successful, vibrant, and has a way of making you feel like you're living in the background of her very public life. I never thought much about it. Until that night. It was a strange evening for no particular reason. Mira had been in one of those moods. Not a bad mood. Just distant, like she was somewhere else, mentally. I didn't think much of it at first, but I started noticing little things. The way she kept checking her phone, the way she sighed a little too often, the way her laughter felt a little too rehearsed when I told her about my day. I assumed she was just stressed. Work maybe, or something else I didn't know about. Then came the knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone. Mira had invited a few friends over, but they weren't due to arrive until later. But when I opened the door, I was taken aback by the person standing there. A woman I had never seen before. Not at all. She was tall, with dark hair that was pulled back in a messy bun. Her eyes were sharp, almost unnervingly so. And there was something about the way she stood there, like she knew exactly what she wanted, and it wasn't just to be polite. She had a certain presence, something electric about her. It was unsettling, in a way. "Hi," she said, her voice smooth, almost too calm. "Is Mira here?" I blinked, unsure of what to make of the situation. "Yes, she's." "Good," the woman interrupted. "I'm her friend, Juno." Juno? I didn't know a Juno. At least, I didn't think I did. Mira had a lot of friends, sure, but I'd never heard that name before. Still, I nodded and stepped aside to let her in. "Come on in," I said, though I was still trying to piece things together. I was confused. How had Mira never mentioned a Juno? Before I could ask anything else, Mira walked into the hallway. When she saw Juno, her face shifted. It wasn't exactly a look of surprise, but something else, something guarded. "Oh," Mira said, almost stiffly. "Juno, you're early." Juno's lips curled into a small smile. "Thought I'd pop in early. You didn't mind, did you?" Mira's response was a little more forced than I expected. "Of course not. Just a little caught off guard, that's all." I watched as the two of them exchanged a look that lasted just a second longer than it should have. It was as if they shared a secret, something I wasn't supposed to know about. I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. "Hey, I'll grab us drinks," I said, trying to break the tension. I wasn't sure why, but I needed to leave the room for a moment. Maybe it was the uncomfortable silence, or the way Juno's gaze kept drifting toward me, as if she was studying me. As I made my way to the kitchen, I heard Mira and Juno talking in hushed tones. I couldn't make out everything they said, but there was an urgency to their words. Mira's voice was quieter now, less confident, and I caught something, just a fragment, that made me pause. "I told you I didn't want him to know." The words hung in the air. My blood ran cold. What didn't she want me to know? I shook it off. I wasn't the type to eavesdrop. Maybe it was nothing, just some trivial conversation. But I couldn't ignore the gut feeling gnawing at me. When I returned to the living room, Mira and Juno were seated, and there was an odd distance between them. It was like I had walked in on something I wasn't supposed to see. But I didn't say anything. Dinner was awkward, to say the least. Mira seemed distracted, constantly glancing at her phone, while Juno seemed to make herself at home, more like a permanent fixture than a guest. Every now and then, she'd glance at me, but it wasn't the casual glances you give someone you don't know very well. No, this was different. There was something too intense about her stare, something that unsettled me more than I wanted to admit. As the night wore on, the atmosphere grew more strained. The conversation became one-sided, with Juno leading most of it, laughing too loudly at her own jokes, while Mira sat there, her usual spark subdued. I tried to engage in the conversation, but it was like talking to a wall. Every time I spoke, it felt like my words were just bouncing off the air, disappearing into nothingness. I couldn't help but feel like I was on the outside looking in, like I was being shut out of something I didn't understand. And then came the moment that changed everything. At one point, Mira excused herself to take a phone call. Juno and I were left alone in the living room. I figured it would be polite to make small talk, but before I could say anything, she leaned in closer, her voice soft, but her words clear. "I've been watching you, Adam," she said, her gaze never leaving mine. "And I think it's time you understand something." My heart skipped a beat. The air in the room seemed to thicken, and suddenly, the evening felt much darker than before. "Understand what?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, but failing to hide the edge of confusion in it. Juno didn't answer right away. She just smiled, a slow, deliberate smile that made my skin crawl. "You'll find out soon enough," she said, standing up and turning to leave. And just like that, she was gone. The silence that followed Juno's departure felt suffocating. Mira returned to the living room moments later, her expression oddly neutral. I was sitting there, in the same place where Juno had just leaned in too close for comfort, and I couldn't shake off that strange sensation in the pit of my stomach. She didn't seem to notice my discomfort, or if she did, she didn't acknowledge it. She just walked in, phone back in hand, and sat down on the couch next to me, like everything was normal. For a moment, I simply stared at her, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The conversation with Juno, her odd behavior, the unsettling feeling that I was somehow out of the loop. What was it that Mira didn't want me to know? I was starting to feel like there was a hidden layer to our lives that I was just starting to uncover, and it was making my skin crawl. But as usual, I didn't speak up. I didn't ask the hard questions. I never did. I've always been the quiet one, the guy who keeps to himself, who doesn't cause problems, who tries to avoid conflict. But tonight, I felt like everything was slowly slipping out of my control. "So," I said, trying to bring some normalcy back to the room, "what was that phone call about?" Mira glanced at me, but her eyes seemed distant, like she wasn't really seeing me. "Oh, nothing important," she replied casually. Too casually. She was quick to brush it off, almost like she didn't want to explain. It wasn't like her. Mira was never one to hide things, at least not from me. We'd always been open, shared everything with each other, until recently, when I started noticing the cracks. She was closing herself off in ways I couldn't understand. And that, in itself, was a problem I hadn't yet learned to deal with. I opened my mouth to ask again, but then I stopped myself. What was the point? She'd just deflect again, just like she had earlier with Juno. I could already feel it, the tension building between us, like an invisible wall that was slowly being erected, brick by brick. But what really bothered me was the fact that I didn't know how to tear it down. "Let's just eat, okay?" she said suddenly, as if reading my mind. She stood up, walked over to the table, and began to serve the food like everything was fine. But I could tell, she was just going through the motions. This wasn't the Mira I knew, the one who had always been so present, so full of energy. The evening dragged on in that uncomfortable silence. Every so often, Mira would try to make small talk, but it was forced, like she was trying to cover up something. I could tell she was lost in her own thoughts. Meanwhile, I was left sitting there, wondering what had happened to the woman I once felt so connected to. It was like we were two strangers sitting across from each other at the dinner table. As the night wore on, the unease in the air grew thicker. Juno's words echoed in my mind. "I've been watching you, Adam." And I couldn't shake the feeling that she had been right. She had been watching me. But why? What did she know that I didn't? And why had she been so bold as to tell me that I would find out soon enough? Mira seemed to be oblivious to the tension I was feeling. She kept talking about her work, her latest projects, the things that used to interest me, but tonight, it all felt hollow. I could hardly pay attention. My mind kept drifting back to Juno, to that cold smile, and to the words she'd said before she left. I wanted to shake it off. I wanted to tell myself that I was just being paranoid, that I was overthinking everything. But I knew better. It wasn't paranoia. It was something else entirely. As the night wore on, the clock ticked past midnight. Juno was long gone, and Mira and I were alone in the apartment. But I couldn't relax. Not with the strange tension hanging between us. Not with the feeling that something was being kept from me. I finally stood up and excused myself to go to bed, but Mira didn't seem to notice. She was too absorbed in her phone, scrolling through something I couldn't see. "Are you coming to bed?" I asked softly, my voice almost a whisper. I didn't want to fight. I didn't want to stir up whatever was simmering under the surface. "Yeah," she said without looking up. "In a minute." But she didn't move. Instead, she sat there, her fingers moving over the screen of her phone, as if she were lost in some world that didn't involve me. That was when I realized something. Mira hadn't been present with me for a while now, and it wasn't just tonight. It had been happening slowly, over time. She was fading away, bit by bit, and I was left holding on to something that was slipping through my fingers. I went to bed alone, but sleep didn't come. My mind kept racing, replaying the events of the night. Juno's cryptic words, Mira's distance, the sense that I had missed something important. I kept staring at the ceiling, waiting for sleep to take me, but it never came. And just when I thought I might finally drift off, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. I reached for it, hoping it was just some random notification. But when I looked at the screen, my heart dropped into my stomach. It was a message from an unknown number. I know what you're thinking. You won't have to wait long. Everything will make sense soon. I felt my pulse quicken. Who was this? What did they know? My hands started to shake as I typed a response. But before I could send it, another message came through. Mira has been keeping secrets. You'll figure it out soon. Just don't ignore the signs. My mind was spinning. What signs? What was I missing? I tossed the phone aside and sat up, staring into the darkness. I had no answers. But I knew one thing for sure. Things were about to change. And I wasn't ready for whatever was coming next. The days that followed felt like a slow unraveling, a tightening of something I couldn't quite identify, but could feel pressing against me. It was as if the air around me had thickened, charged with a quiet tension that never quite left. I tried to ignore it. I tried to go about my usual routine. Wake up, go to work, come home. But every little thing felt off. Mira was still, distant. I could feel the growing divide between us with each passing day, but I had no idea how to close it, how to bridge that gap. Her smiles were more forced, her laughs less genuine. Every conversation, we had seemed to land flat. There were moments when I thought we were in sync again, but they were fleeting, disappearing the second I let my guard down. And the messages from the unknown number, they haunted me. Each time I opened my phone, I half expected another cryptic message. But there was nothing, just the echo of that strange warning. Mira has been keeping secrets. You'll figure it out soon. I tried to shake it off, tried to tell myself it was just someone playing a game with me, trying to mess with my head. But deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. Something was happening, something I was missing, and every time I thought I could ignore it, the weight of it grew heavier. I found myself staring at Mira more often, wondering if she was hiding something, but she always seemed so effortlessly perfect, so composed. Then came the evening that changed everything, though I didn't realize it at the time. It started as a typical evening, a quiet dinner after another long day. Mira had suggested we take a walk afterward, something we hadn't done in weeks. I was cautiously hopeful. Maybe this was the moment we would finally talk, finally clear the air. As we walked through the park, the last traces of sunlight dipping below the horizon, I could feel the weight of the unspoken words between us. Adam, Mira began, her voice tentative. I've been meaning to talk to you about something. I looked over at her, my heart skipping a beat. Was this it? The moment we finally had the conversation I'd been waiting for? The one where everything could be laid out on the table, where all the questions I had would be answered. Yeah, I asked, my voice softer than I intended. What's on your mind? She hesitated, taking a deep breath as if she were gathering her thoughts. I watched her, trying to read her face, but it was a mask, her usual calm, controlled expression. I know things have been strange between us lately. She started, her eyes fixed ahead. I haven't been myself. I've been distracted. I waited, my chest tightening with anticipation. Was she about to confess something? Was this her way of admitting that something was wrong? But then she stopped walking, turning to face me. There's something I need to tell you, Adam, she said, her voice dropping. But it's not something I can explain right now. That was when I felt it, the coldness, the sudden shift in her demeanor. It was like she was pulling away, retreating into herself again. I stared at her, feeling the space between us widen even further. What do you mean? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. What do you need to tell me? You can't just leave it like this. Mira shook her head, her eyes momentarily flickering with something I couldn't name. I can't tell you, not yet. But I need you to trust me, Adam. The words hit me like a slap. Trust her? My mind raced as I tried to piece together what she was saying, but I couldn't make sense of it. There was something in her eyes, something unreadable, that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. And that's when I felt it, an icy prickling of intuition. The feeling that she wasn't being completely honest with me. Trust you, I repeated, my voice trembling now. How can I trust you if you won't even tell me what's going on? Mira, this isn't how we do things. We talk. We communicate. You can't just drop this on me and expect me to be okay with it. She looked away, her gaze distant, and I could see the uncertainty in her posture. It was like she was standing on the edge of something, but too afraid to take the next step. I wanted to reach out, to pull her back, but the walls between us seemed higher than they ever had been. Adam, please, just give me some time, she said quietly, almost pleading. I'm not doing this to hurt you. I swear. I opened my mouth to respond, but before I could, a figure in the distance caught my eye. It was too far away to make out clearly, but I could tell it was someone walking briskly toward us. Mira noticed it too, her body stiffening as she glanced over her shoulder. Her face froze in a way I couldn't understand, and without warning, she grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the edge of the park, where the shadows were thickest. Come on, she whispered urgently, her voice shaky. We need to leave. Now. I didn't question her. Something in her tone told me that whatever was about to happen was something I wasn't supposed to see. We hurried away, walking quickly but silently, as if the whole world had suddenly grown quiet. When we reached the edge of the park and turned down a side street, I could feel her tension. Her grip on my arm was tight, almost desperate. My mind was racing, trying to understand what had just happened. What had she seen? Who was that? Mira, what the hell is going on? I asked, finally breaking the silence. My voice was low, but my heart was pounding in my chest. I needed answers, needed to know why she had pulled me away like that. She didn't answer at first. She just kept walking, her pace quickening, until we reached our building. She didn't even look at me as we entered the lobby. Not now, Adam, she said, her voice strained. Please, not here. But I couldn't take it anymore. As we reached the elevator, I grabbed her arm, stopping her cold. Tell me what's happening, Mira. You can't keep doing this. You've been acting so distant, and now you're running from something. What is it? She looked at me, her eyes wide, and for the first time in a long time, I saw fear in them. It was a brief moment, but it was enough. I can't explain right now, she whispered, her voice trembling. But trust me, everything will come out soon. You need to be ready, Adam. Just be ready. And just like that, she stepped into the elevator, leaving me standing there, completely unsure of what was coming next. That night, as I lay in bed, trying to process everything that had happened, I couldn't help but feel the weight of those words hanging over me. Be ready. Ready for what? I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. The words Mira had whispered before stepping into the elevator echoed in my head like an ominous drumbeat. Be ready. But for what? What did she mean? Everything inside me screamed for an explanation, but I couldn't get a single word out of her. She had retreated into herself again, shutting me out just as I thought we were getting closer to some kind of truth. The tension between us was unbearable, and I was left alone in the apartment, trying to make sense of everything that had been happening in the past few days. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was on the verge of discovering something big, but it was like trying to grab smoke with my bare hands. The morning came with no answers, just an uneasy calm that hung in the air. Mira left early for work, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I wandered around the apartment, restless, unable to focus on anything. Every corner felt like it was closing in on me. I kept thinking about Juno, the mysterious woman who had shown up unannounced, and how she had seemed to know something I didn't. I couldn't shake the way she looked at me, the intensity in her eyes, as if she were observing me, studying me like a puzzle that she was trying to solve. But why? What was her connection to Mira? And why had she been so cryptic, so ominous? As I sat down at the kitchen table, I noticed something strange. On the counter, next to the stack of unopened mail, was Mira's phone. It had been left behind. I knew I shouldn't go through it, but in that moment, I didn't care. There was too much at stake. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to find them by sitting around and waiting for Mira to come clean. I picked up the phone, my hands shaking slightly, and unlocked it. My heart raced as I scanned through her messages. Most of them were innocuous, work-related texts, reminders from friends, things I'd seen her reply to 1,000 times. But then something caught my eye. There was a message from a number I didn't recognize. The message was brief, almost casual. Tonight's the night. Are you ready? I froze. The message was dated just a few days ago, right around the time Mira had started acting strange. I stared at the screen for a long time, trying to make sense of it. Who was this person? Why hadn't Mira told me about them? I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was just a friend, someone she was planning to meet. But there was something about the way the message was worded that didn't sit right with me. Are you ready? Ready for what? It felt like there was something more going on here, something deeper than I had initially realized. I scrolled down, hoping for more context, but the conversation was short. Just that message, followed by another one that read, "It's all set. We'll handle it when the time comes." My mind was racing now, and I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. Who was this person, and why did Mira feel the need to hide them from me? It wasn't just the secrecy, it was the way she had acted last night. The fear in her eyes, the way she had rushed me away from the park. She knew something was coming, something I wasn't supposed to know about. But what was it? Just as I was about to dive deeper into the phone's messages, the front door clicked open, and Mira stepped inside. She froze when she saw me sitting there, her phone in hand. Her face went pale, and for a moment, we just stared at each other. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I could feel the weight of the moment settle over us. "Adam, what are you doing?" Her voice was low, almost a whisper, but I could hear the underlying tension. I didn't even hesitate. "Who is this?" I asked, holding up the phone so she could see the messages. "Why haven't you told me about them?" Mira took a step back, her eyes wide with panic. For the first time since this whole thing started, I saw the crack in her facade. She was scared. "But why?" "Adam, please," she said, her voice shaking. "I didn't mean for you to find that. It's not what you think." I stood up, the phone still in my hand, my anger bubbling to the surface. "Then tell me what it is, Mira. Tell me what's really going on. Why are you hiding things from me? Why won't you talk to me?" Mira closed her eyes, taking a deep breath, and when she opened them again, her expression had changed. It was no longer the defensive, fearful look I had seen moments before. Instead, there was something cold, something calculating in her gaze. "I'm not hiding things from you, Adam," she said slowly, each word deliberate. "But some things are better left in the dark. You wouldn't understand, not yet." "What the hell does that mean?" I demanded, my voice rising. "I deserve to know what's going on. If we're supposed to be partners, Mira, you can't just shut me out like this. You've been shutting me out for weeks. First it's Juno, then these secret messages, and now this? I don't know who you are anymore." Mira didn't respond right away. Instead, she looked down at the floor, as if she were gathering the strength to say something. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "You're not ready, Adam. I try to protect you from this, but I see now that I've only made things worse." I felt a chill run through me. What was she talking about? Protect me from what? The fear in her voice was so real that it made my blood run cold. There was something more, something I wasn't seeing, and it was tearing her apart to keep it from me. "Mira," I said, my voice softer now, "please. Whatever it is, we can face it together. You don't have to do this alone." For a moment, she seemed to consider it. Her lips parted as though she was about to say something, but then the moment passed. She looked at me, and I could see the hesitation in her eyes. I can't," she whispered. "Not yet." Before I could respond, there was a knock at the door. Myra's head snapped up, and her face drained of color. She looked at me, panic flashing across her face. "Hide the phone," she whispered urgently, stepping toward the door. "Please, do it now." I didn't ask why. I just did what she said, slipping the phone into my pocket as I moved quickly toward the kitchen. My heart was hammering in my chest, and I could barely catch my breath. Who was at the door? And why was Mira so terrified? The knock at the door rang through the apartment with an intensity that felt out of place. Myra's face paled even more, and she froze in place. The tension in the room was palpable. I could hear my heart beating in my ears, and my stomach tightened with unease. Who was at the door? The look of panic in Myra's eyes was enough to send a chill down my spine. It wasn't just that she was startled. She was scared. And whatever was coming, whatever had her so rattled, was something I had no part in understanding. I hurriedly shoved Myra's phone into my pocket and pretended to keep myself busy, trying to act casual even though I felt anything but. Mira looked at me for a brief moment, her eyes pleading, as though silently begging me to keep my distance. The knock sounded again, more insistent this time, and I could feel the room growing smaller, the walls pressing in on me. "I'll get it," Mira said quietly, her voice shaky as she moved toward the door. But she didn't open it immediately. Instead, she paused for a long second, almost as if she were trying to decide whether or not she should answer. The fear in her eyes deepened, and I could see the conflict there. Something was about to happen, something she wasn't prepared to face. And whatever it was, I had no choice but to brace myself. With a deep breath, Mira finally reached for the door. She opened it slowly, just a crack, enough for a figure to slip into the room. A man, tall, with dark hair that seemed a bit too long, his expression stern and unreadable. He wasn't someone I recognized, and his presence in our apartment felt entirely wrong. "Mira," the man said, his voice low and measured, as if everything he said was carefully calculated. He didn't look at me right away. He didn't even seem to acknowledge my presence, which was unsettling in itself. I could feel a shift in the air, a subtle change in the atmosphere as soon as he stepped inside. "Jonah," Mira said softly, almost in a whisper. There was a slight tremor in her voice, and I noticed how she took a step back as he entered. The fear was undeniable now. "Jonah?" I thought. Who was this guy, and why did Mira seem so terrified of him? "I told you not to get involved," Jonah said, his eyes now flicking toward me, but his gaze was cold, almost dismissive. "This is bigger than you think." I stood frozen, unable to speak. The way he said it, with that tone of finality, made my stomach drop. This wasn't just a casual visit. This was something else, something far more dangerous than I could have imagined. Mira's expression twisted with guilt, and she looked away from both of us, as though she couldn't bear to face what was unfolding. "I didn't want to," Mira said, her voice barely audible. "But it's too late now. Adam, he's been asking questions. He's getting too close." At the mention of my name, Jonah's attention shifted fully to me. His eyes were sharp, almost predatory. For the first time, he really looked at me, and it was like being scrutinized by something much more dangerous than a mere stranger. I could feel his eyes scanning me, appraising me like I was a threat to something bigger than I could understand. "Adam," Jonah said slowly, as if weighing each word, "you should have left things alone. You don't know what you're dealing with. But now that you've come this far, there's no turning back. I can't protect you anymore." "Protect me?" I didn't know what he was talking about. Protect me from what? I blurted out before I could stop myself. "Who the hell are you? And why are you here?" Jonah's expression didn't change, but I could feel the tension in the room growing. Mira's hands were clenched into fists at her sides, her eyes downcast, as if she couldn't bear to look at either of us. She was caught in the middle, and I could see the weight of the situation pulling her apart. "You don't get to ask questions," Jonah snapped, his voice suddenly harsh. "You're too far in, Adam. This isn't just about you anymore. This is about Mira. This is about everything she's been trying to protect you from. And now, you're a part of it whether you like it or not." I took a step forward, confusion and anger flooding my veins. "I don't care about whatever you're involved in," I said, my voice rising. "But if this is about Mira, I want to know what the hell is going on. You don't get to come into my home, threaten me, and expect me to stay quiet." Jonah's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, the air in the room felt frozen. He stepped toward me, his presence overwhelming. "You really don't understand, do you?" he said, his voice dangerously calm. "You've been asking the wrong questions. You've been digging in places you shouldn't be. And now, it's too late. You've made your choice." I felt my breath catch in my throat. The words didn't make sense, and yet there was something about them that struck me to the core. It's too late. What did he mean by that? What had I chosen by asking questions? I was just trying to understand what was happening to my life, to Mira, to everything. But Jonah made it sound like my curiosity had already sealed my fate. "Jonah, please," Mira said, her voice breaking through the tension. She stepped forward, her hands outstretched as if to calm him, but Jonah didn't flinch. "You don't have to do this. I didn't mean for Adam to get involved. He doesn't know anything. He doesn't understand." Jonah let out a sharp breath, a sigh of frustration. "It doesn't matter now. We're past the point of turning back. I just need you to know, Adam, that everything you thought you knew about Mira is a lie. She's not who you think she is. And whatever this is, whatever she's been hiding from you, it's going to catch up to both of you. Soon." Mira's face went white at his words, and she looked like she might collapse under the weight of them. She didn't say anything, just stood there, silent and defeated. Jonah turned to leave, But before he did, he glanced over his shoulder, his expression unreadable. "Be careful, Adam," he said. "You're in deeper than you realize." The door closed behind him, and the apartment seemed to go quiet in his wake. Mira didn't move. She stood there, staring at the door, her body rigid with tension. For a moment, there was no sound except for the pounding of my own heartbeat in my ears. I could feel the room closing in on me again, the walls pressing tighter with every unanswered question, every piece of the puzzle that I still couldn't make sense of. Finally, Mira spoke. Her voice was barely a whisper. "I never wanted you to find out this way," she said, her words heavy with guilt. "I never wanted you to be involved in any of this." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her words settle in. "Then tell me, Mira," I said, my voice low but firm. "Tell me everything. I can't keep living in the dark. I need to know what's happening. I need to know who he is and what you've been hiding from me." She turned to face me, her eyes filled with a mix of fear and regret. She opened her mouth to speak, but before she could say anything more, her phone buzzed on the counter. Without thinking, I grabbed it. The message read, "It's time. Are you ready?" I looked at Mira. For the first time, I saw something shift in her eyes, a decision. Myra's face went pale as she watched me read the message on her phone. For a brief moment, time seemed to freeze. My heart pounded in my chest as I stared at the screen, trying to make sense of the words. "It's time. Are you ready?" The simplicity of the message was terrifying. The words felt like a signal, a call to action, but for what? And why had Mira received it just now, when everything was already spiraling out of control? I looked up at her, my grip tightening on the phone, my mind racing. She was standing there, her hands trembling slightly, her face a mixture of fear and something else I couldn't quite identify. I could see it now, the raw emotion in her eyes, the way she looked like she was holding back, like there was something deep inside her she was afraid to reveal. "Who is it, Mira?" I asked, my voice shaky, the words barely coming out. "Who's been sending you these messages? What is going on?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she took a step back, her eyes flickering toward the door, like she was considering running, like she was debating whether to leave or stay. I could see the conflict in her, the fear, but also something else, something darker, like she had already made a choice, but she wasn't ready to share it with me. "I don't want you involved in this, Adam," she said softly, almost pleading. "I never did. But now it's too late." "Too late for what?" I asked, feeling the pressure building in my chest. The tension was unbearable. It felt like we were both standing at the edge of a cliff, with no way to turn back. Mira didn't answer. Instead, she looked at me, her eyes full of regret, and then she sighed, as if she had made a decision she knew would hurt me. "Jonah was right," she whispered. "You're too far in now. You've seen too much. There's no turning back for either of us." I shook my head, trying to process her words, but nothing made sense. Jonah's cryptic warnings, the messages, the fear that had been building in her every time I asked the wrong question. It was all coming to a head now, and I was standing in the middle of it, completely blind. "You've been lying to me, Mira," I said, the words cutting through the air like a knife. "You've been keeping secrets, and I deserve to know what's going on. You owe me that. What is it? What's really happening?" Her eyes welled up with tears, but she quickly wiped them away, as though she didn't want me to see her vulnerability. "I never wanted you to know, Adam," she said, her voice breaking. "I never wanted to pull you into this. But I can't keep it from you anymore. You need to understand that everything I've done, everything I've hidden, it was for your own safety." "For my safety?" I repeated, my voice rising in disbelief. "What are you talking about? I don't need protection, Mira. I just need you, the real you, not this stranger who's been lying to me." She turned away, her back to me now, as if she couldn't bear to face the truth any longer. "It's not that simple, Adam," she said, her voice quiet, almost hollow. "You don't understand what's at stake. There are things happening, things that have been happening for years, and I've been trying to protect you from them. But now it's too late. The people I've been trying to protect you from, they're getting closer." "Who?" I demanded, stepping closer to her. "Who's getting closer? Mira, please, just tell me." She turned back to face me, her eyes filled with desperation. "There are people who want something from me, and they'll do anything to get it. You don't know what they're capable of. I've been running from them for so long, trying to keep you out of it, but I can't anymore. They know about you now. They know you're involved. And they're not going to stop until they get what they want. I stood there, frozen in place, as the gravity of her words hit me. People who want something from her. My mind raced with possibilities, but none of them made sense. What could Mira possibly have that was worth risking everything for? I don't understand, I said, my voice cracking. What could you possibly have that would make them come after you like this? What are they after? Mira hesitated, looking down at the floor, her hands clenched at her sides. It was clear she was fighting with herself, trying to find the right words, but the truth was weighing too heavily on her. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she whispered the words I had been dreading to hear. They want me, Adam, she said, her voice barely audible. They want my abilities. Abilities? The word felt foreign, like it didn't belong in the same sentence as Mira. I had never once suspected that there was anything special about her, at least not in the way she was describing. She wasn't some superhero or mystic. She was just Mira, my wife. Or at least, that's what I thought. What do you mean, abilities? I asked, my voice trembling. What are you talking about? Mira looked up at me then, her eyes filled with a mix of sadness and fear. I can't explain it all right now. I'm not ready to tell you everything. But I need you to believe me, Adam. The people who are after me, they're dangerous. And now that you know, you're in danger too. I couldn't process her words. They didn't make sense. It felt like I had stepped into a nightmare, a reality that was completely out of my control. My mind was spinning. I wanted to ask more, wanted to push her to tell me everything, but I could see it in her eyes. She wasn't ready to share it all, but I couldn't back down now. Not when the stakes were this high. Mira, please, I said, my voice softening. I need you to trust me. Whatever this is, whatever's going on, we'll face it together. I can't keep standing on the outside, not knowing what's happening. I love you. You don't have to go through this alone. For a moment, Mira just stared at me, and I could see the conflict in her eyes. She wanted to trust me, I could tell. But whatever this was, whatever she was hiding, it was too big for her to share all at once. She took a deep breath, then looked down at the floor. Fine, she said quietly. I'll tell you everything. But we have to leave. We can't stay here anymore. They'll come for us. And if we don't leave now, it might be too late. She grabbed my hand, pulling me toward the door. And just as we reached it, her phone buzzed again. This time, she didn't even look at it. She was already moving, already in full flight mode. Whatever was coming, we were running out of time. We didn't speak as we moved through the apartment. Mira pulled me by the wrist, her grip tight, her urgency unmistakable. The weight of everything that had been revealed so far hung in the air, suffocating us both. Abilities. Those words echoed in my mind like a distorted melody, a constant reminder that there were layers to Mira I had never even imagined. I had no idea what she was talking about, but I knew one thing for certain. Whatever it wasn't something I could just walk away from. Myra's eyes darted to the door, her body tense, as if expecting someone to burst through it at any moment. I could feel the fear radiating from her, the kind of fear that made her look like a cornered animal, ready to flee. And as much as I wanted to tell her to calm down, to slow down, I could sense the danger was real. There was something far more dangerous lurking in the shadows, something that had been hunting her, and now, it seemed, it was hunting us both. We have to leave, Mira said, her voice barely above a whisper, but it was filled with such intensity that it felt like a command. I can't stay here. They'll find us, Adam. They'll find us here. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had never seen her like this, never seen her so vulnerable, so afraid. She was always the one in control, the one who handled everything with such calm precision. But now, she was unraveling before my eyes, and I had no idea how to stop it. Who are they? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, trying to anchor myself in the whirlwind of confusion. What do they want from you? Mira didn't answer immediately. She kept her gaze fixed on the door, her mind racing, her body vibrating with the kind of fear that only comes when you know you're being hunted. I could see the sweat on her forehead, the tightness in her jaw, and I knew she was struggling with whether or not to tell me the truth. But then, as if making a decision, she turned to face me. They're part of something much bigger than you can imagine, Adam. They've been watching me for years. They've been tracking every move, every decision, every person I've ever interacted with. She paused, her voice faltering as she gathered her thoughts. They want me because of what I can do, what I can become. What do you mean, what you can become? I asked, my mind racing, trying to piece together the fragments of her words. How could they have been tracking you for years? And what do you mean by what you can become? Mira closed her eyes, as if she were trying to find the courage to say what needed to be said. When she opened them again, there was a clarity in them, a grim determination that sent a shiver down my spine. I can manipulate things, Adam. Not just in a physical sense, but in a way that affects the world around me. I can bend reality itself. I stood there, frozen, staring at her. I must have looked like a fool, my mouth open, trying to process the impossible words she had just spoken. You can what? I finally managed to say, my voice cracking. Mira, this isn't some sci-fi movie. What are you talking about? How is that even possible? She shook her head, her eyes full of sorrow. I didn't choose it. It just had happened. And I've been hiding it for so long, trying to keep it under control. Her eyes flickered to the door again, and I could see her anxiety mounting. But now they know, and they'll stop at nothing to use me, Adam. To use my power. They won't just leave us alone. The air in the apartment felt suddenly too thick, as if the walls themselves were closing in around us. I wanted to deny it, to say that it couldn't be true, that Mira was just under stress, that all of this was some wild nightmare that would pass. But deep down, I knew she wasn't lying. I could feel it in the way she spoke, in the fear in her eyes. This wasn't some delusion. Whatever she was talking about was real. We need to get out, Mira said, her voice urgent now. We can't stay here any longer. Not with the messages, not with Jonah getting closer. She grabbed my hand, her grip tightening, and pulled me toward the door. I followed her without question, my thoughts a swirling mess of confusion and disbelief. I had no idea what was going on, what had really been happening in our lives all this time. But one thing was clear, I couldn't leave Mira now. She needed me, whether she admitted it or not, and I wasn't going to let her face whatever was coming alone. As we reached the door, there was another knock. This one wasn't tentative like before, it was forceful, deliberate. Whoever was on the other side wasn't here for pleasantries. Mira stiffened, her body going rigid, and I could see her eyes darting toward the window. She looked like she was calculating her next move, weighing her options. Mira, what the hell is going on? I whispered urgently. Who are they? And why are they after you? Tell me now, please. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she motioned for me to stay quiet. She moved silently across the room, her every movement calculated, as though she were preparing for something she knew was inevitable. I had never seen her so cold, so controlled in the face of danger. They're here, she said quietly, almost to herself. Jonah was right. It's too late now. My heart skipped a beat as I turned toward the door, listening carefully. I could hear faint sounds coming from outside. Footsteps, a low murmur of voices, something that told me the situation was escalating. Mira, I said, my voice desperate, we need to go now. Please. Whatever this is, we can't let them take you. She nodded, her face set in grim determination. I won't let them take me, Adam. I promise you that. But as she reached for the door, a voice rang out from the hallway. Mira. The voice called, a low, menacing tone that sent a chill down my spine. We know you're in there. You can't hide forever. Myra's body tensed, and she grabbed my arm tightly, pulling me toward the back exit. Run, she whispered urgently. Don't look back. Just run. I didn't hesitate. I ran after her, following her through the apartment like a shadow, my mind racing with fear and confusion. Whoever these people were, they weren't going to stop. And now, neither would we. As we burst through the back door and into the night, I realized one thing with chilling clarity. This wasn't just about Mira anymore. It was about us, and the terrifying road ahead that we had no choice but to walk together. We ran. There was no time to think, no time to question. Just the pounding of our feet against the cold asphalt, the sharp breath in my lungs, and Myra's hand gripping mine, pulling me forward as we dashed down the alleyway behind our building. I could hear the footsteps of our pursuers growing fainter behind us, but the adrenaline kept us moving faster, further away from whatever danger lay behind. The city was alive around us, but we were in our own little world, a world of fear and uncertainty. Myra's face was determined, her eyes flickering constantly between the path ahead and the shadows behind us. We turned corners, ducked through narrow streets, and for a moment, I allowed myself to believe we might actually make it out of this. The world outside was chaotic, but for the first time in what felt like weeks, we were running towards something other than fear. We were running toward freedom. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Mira slowed down, pulling me into a small, deserted courtyard. We both collapsed against the brick wall, gasping for air. The silence of the space around us was deafening, and for the first time in a long while, we were able to pause and take in what had just happened. Our hearts were racing, but we were safe. Mira leaned against the wall, her chest heaving, her face flushed from the run. I stood next to her, still processing the events that had just unfolded. We hadn't spoken since we left the apartment, too consumed by the urgency of the moment. But now, in the quiet of the courtyard, the words finally seemed to find their way out. "Mira," I said, my voice still shaky but with a new sense of relief. "We made it. We actually made it." She looked at me, and for the first time in what felt like forever, there was a soft smile on her lips, something genuine and full of warmth. The fear had faded from her eyes, replaced by something I hadn't seen in her for so long: hope. "We did," she said softly. "But this isn't over yet. We can't stop now. They're not going to stop coming after us." I nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. But there was something else in her voice too, something that hinted at strength, at a belief that we could get through this. She was no longer running from something. She was running toward something. And so was I. "We'll figure it out," I said, looking her in the eye, my voice steady now. "Together." Mira smiled again, a small, knowing smile that filled me with warmth. She nodded, her gaze softening. "Together," she echoed. "No more running, Adam. It's time to fight back." Just then, the phone buzzed in her pocket. We both looked at it, but this time, there was no fear in her eyes. She took a deep breath and pulled it out, staring at the screen for a moment before looking up at me. "It's him," she said quietly, her voice calm now. "Jonah. He says it's time. Time for us to finally take control." I felt my chest tighten with a mix of fear and excitement. But there was something different in the way Mira held the phone now. There was no hesitation. There was no uncertainty. She was ready. "Let's do it," I said, my voice firm, my hand reaching out to take hers. Together, we had already been through the hardest part. The unknown didn't scare me anymore. I knew that whatever came next, we would face it as a team. No more hiding. No more running. Mira nodded, and for the first time, there was a sense of peace in her eyes. She wasn't just the woman I loved. She was someone stronger than I had ever realized. Someone who had been carrying the weight of a secret, of a burden, for far too long. And now, we were going to face it head on. We stood there for a moment, just the two of us, in the middle of the city, surrounded by chaos, but anchored in something real, something true. I wasn't sure where the road would take us, but for the first time, I knew that we could face it, whatever it was, together. And that made all the difference. With a final, determined look at each other, we turned toward the street, ready to face the future, ready to take control of our lives, ready to build the life we were meant to have. The chase was over, and now, the real fight was just beginning. But we were no longer afraid.